Hi, everybody. If you're new to the Iowa Teacher Dyslexia Support Group, my name is Amy Manning, and I kind of host the monthly meetings that we have. And to kick off our September meetings, we have Lindsay Kemeny, who has written a fabulous book about taking kind of the best routines and strategies that we can and making shifts in our instruction. And we are so excited to have her. I am holding also a book giveaway for her book. So if you would like to be in the running for that, it would be appreciated, even though I know most of you, just to put your name and email address in the chat so then I can just easily look down the chat for that. And I'll let you know and send you one through Amazon. I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Lindsay, and I'm so excited to learn from you tonight.
Thank you. So excited to be here. Okay, let me share my screen and get this set up. All right, there we go. Can you guys see that?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and then let me just open up because now you all disappeared. So I need to get my video panel back up and the chat back up in case we have some questions. There we go. Okay, got it. All right, welcome you guys to my presentation, 7 Mighty Moves for Reading Success. Thank you for being with me. You guys are my kind of people. I love that on your own time, you're doing some learning and growing, and I just love that. I'm like that too. I'm a lifelong learner, I feel like, and I can just never get enough. So I'm so happy to be here. All right, a little bit about me. You can see here a little bit about me. The important thing to know is I am a first grade teacher and I'm a huge literacy nerd. Like I love all things literacy. And sometimes I feel like maybe I'm a little misunderstood sometimes because I'm so passionate about it. I think learning to read is like going to solve all the world's problems, right? But there's a reason for that. And the reason it has to do with my son. So I like to start a little bit telling you about him because he is really the reason I am here. And I had known from the time he was young that he was struggling to learn to read, and I didn't know what to do. And I was doing all the things that I had been taught in college and my early years of teaching, and nothing was working. And he is my third child. So my older two learned to read. It's so much easier. And now this one, I didn't understand. It was kind of embarrassing for me because I was a teacher. I'm a teacher, and like I can't help my own son learn to read. And so it was when he was in second grade, the end of second grade, that we finally did some outside testing and found out that he has dyslexia. Along with dysgraphia, that's a writing disability, dyscalculia, that's a math disability. And I just remember thinking, dyslexia, what is that? I thought that's where you see backwards. That's not what he has. And that's a big myth about dyslexia, by the way. So this just started me on my journey because I had to find out, what do students with dyslexia need to learn to read? Well, that led to, what does everyone need to learn to read? What happens in the brain when we learn to read? And I just kept learning. It was like I was like the starved animal. I couldn't get enough. And the things I was learning, I began to apply both with my son when I was working with him and in my classroom. And suddenly I had so much more clarity into what to do when students were struggling to read and really how to help all my learners. And I saw such a difference in my classroom. I saw such a difference in the proficiency levels of my students. And the thing is that with my son, he was also diagnosed with depression the same time he was diagnosed with dyslexia. And his depression all centered around this, his struggles learning to read. And that experience completely changed me. And when you hear your 8-year-old child tell you that they wish they were dead, and I'm sorry because I know that's hard to hear, but it changes you. And it changed me because I saw how tightly connected our self-esteem is with the ability to read. And the thing is that my son is not alone. I've heard grown men cry talking about their struggles learning to read. And the thing is they can learn to read, right? And we can help give them that gift of literacy. And what I found for my son is that as his reading level improved, his self-esteem improved. And so, of course, we did so many things to help his depression, and especially when he started these suicidal thoughts and actions. We took him to therapy, but what helped him the most was the ability to read. And I will never forget starting to see that. I remember we went to an event and it was right before he was entering fourth grade, and we had been working together and we had been reading a chapter book together. I would read a sentence, he would read a sentence. And I remember at an event in the right before school started, he introduced himself, said his name, and said, "I have dyslexia, but I can read fourth grade books." And that was like the first kind of, okay, oh, that was my first thing, like, oh my gosh, we're getting better, because he actually, he said something a little more positive, and it just continued to get better. So anyways, I just like to kind of say that just to explain why I'm so passionate, because I've seen the difference in him and in some of my students. Okay, I'm not perfect. I'm not a perfect teacher. But my scores have been so much better since I've been learning about these things. And so here's just an example. My last year, first grade, beginning of the year, half my students are below the benchmark, if you're familiar with Acadience. So I had 10 students in red. I was really kind of alarmed by that. But then at the end of the year, that's on the right, so much better. I still had one in red, but he had one green sub-score. I was so happy about that. But we know there's still going to be students that need help. And what's really important is that most of my students had well above typical progress. And so even that little guy in red had well above typical progress. That's so important, because if the next year teacher can keep him on that steep trajectory, then he should be able to get to grade level this next year. So you can see here that this was the pathways of progress. So this is taking my students, their beginning of the year score, and comparing them with other students who scored the exact same as them. And my goal is to have almost everyone well above, but we weren't totally all well above, but everyone was typical or better. I think I had one typical, and thankfully no one below or well below. And then you can see a close-up of some of those more struggling students there on the left for their progress throughout the year. So what I did is I feel like I had to make these changes. So once I learned about my son and that started me on my journey, I needed to make some changes in the classroom. And that's what these 7 mighty moves are. And they're changes based on research. And what I'm going to do is just quickly give you an overview of each move. And then I'm going to give you one idea for each move, something that you could do right away. And of course, there's a lot to go through. So yes, I talk quickly, but this is being recorded so you can watch it again. And there is, of course, the book is going to go a lot more into each move, and the book will have a lot more strategies for each move too. So if you're interested in that. All right, so these are really about my moves and the changes I made. So I'll kind of tell you with each one maybe what I was doing before. So move 1 is about teaching phonemic awareness with intention. This one I had to do a couple moves in this area. So, and it's almost kind of embarrassing because initially I didn't know anything about phonemic awareness. So my first move was just to start teaching it, because I hadn't been taught anything about it, didn't even know it's a thing. And of course, phonemic awareness is that ability to hear the sounds and manipulate the sounds in spoken language. And there's a few things there that I also learned. So I learned that we don't need to spend 15, 20 minutes on oral only phonemic awareness. The National Reading Panel showed that in kindergarten, about 20 hours for the whole year was optimum. And that boils down to about 6 minutes per day. And that was in kindergarten. So think in first grade, I can spend even less on this. And I can do, of course, for my students that need it in small group, I'm going to help them, but we don't need to spend tons of time on it. So that was a shift that I made. Also realizing that we need to get to the phoneme level as quickly as possible. So before, I would spend a lot of time on those larger chunks, like think syllables or just clapping words in a sentence or onset rhyme. But there's actually research that shows that some students can bypass that and go get right to the phoneme level. So we don't want to keep our students stuck on those larger units. So sometimes you might say, oh, there's a student that can't rhyme. We just keep working on rhyming. No, get them to the phoneme level, because they need to be able to blend and segment those individual sounds in order to read the words and spell the words. That's kind of the most important part there. And then I do, if you read this chapter in my book, I do talk about how for some students, I'll have to back up. So if they are really struggling with the phoneme level, then I know, okay, I'm going to go to some larger units to prep them. And I kind of explain how I can do that all, within a very short amount of time, always with the goal to get them to the phoneme level and not get stuck in those larger chunks, if that makes sense. And then another thing I learned was that we can connect the phonemes to the letters, and that is really valuable. In fact, the National Reading Panel found that phonemic awareness, when tied with letters, when letters were included, it was more effective. This can be really confusing because it's like, wait, phonemic awareness, I thought that was something that can be done in the dark, right? We hear that. And yes, it can, but we also need to explicitly show our students how those phonemes connect with the letters. And I'm going to show you an activity where that will do that in just a minute. I love to use manipulatives with my students. And so we will, this is really good for segmenting because it's such an abstract concept. And so especially, gosh, right now I'm beginning of the year, first grade, it just reminds me how much they need these scaffolds, and then we can pull them away once they have those, or we can tap the sounds with our fingers, and then we write the sounds, write the letters on the whiteboard. Okay, so the activity I want to share with you is to do word chaining. This is such a great activity for a phonemic awareness activity that uses letters. So it's both phonics and phonemic awareness combined. So you give students a word like tap, and they write tap on their little whiteboards. And then I'll say, change tap to top. Now here, they have to think which phoneme changed. This is phonemic awareness where they're really having to figure it out. And I can kind of help them. Look, you have tap, change this to top. And I can kind of help them a little bit, pointing. Some will need more help than others. Then they erase that A, they put the O. Great, you have top. Now change top to shop. They figure out, erase the T, and they're putting in SH. So you're changing one sound at a time. You don't want to do more than one sound, just one sound at a time. And you can change the task by, I just told them the sound to change. Now I could just tell them the letter. So what were we on? Shop. I could say, great, change the O to an I. So instead of saying change A to I, I'm saying change the O to an I. Now this is a decoding task, and they have to tell me what the new word is. So you can kind of flip between both. This is such a great activity. If you are upper grades, this might be worth it for some of your students who are struggling to see how they do with this kind of task. And you can do harder words. So think of words with consonant clusters at the beginning, or blends. So think slop, change the ul to t, and it's new word stop. and you can put blends at the end. And so you can make it a little more challenging to see how they do. All right, let's go on to the next move, which is explicit and systematic phonics instruction. Now, before I thought I was teaching phonics, but the truth is I didn't really know what good phonics instruction looks like. And really my phonics was really kind of reactive. So whatever phonics skill or word chunk, I did a lot of word chunks back then, whatever word chunk happened to be in the book we were reading, then that's the one I was going to teach, or something that they struggled with, then I'm going to teach that. But that's going to leave a lot of like Swiss cheese type holes, right, in their phonics knowledge. So I learned that no, we can't leave things to chance. We need to follow a scope and sequence of skills that goes from least complex to more complex, that goes from high frequency spellings to low frequency spellings, and make sure students that we explicitly teach those things to our students. Also, I learned the importance of this I do, we do, you do format that Anita Archer coined. And sometimes people think that this means, or explicit instruction means, the teacher is up there just kind of lecturing and it's really boring. And that is not true. These explicit instructions is very interactive. I say something, they say something. I do something, they do something. And students are engaged in frequent responses constantly in our phonics lessons. And so they love it and they're participating and they have so many opportunities to respond, whether it's a choral response, whether it's writing something down, whether it's turning and telling the neighbor something, writing their sentence, they're always doing something. And so that was a big change for me. And the activity I want to share, I'm guessing you guys have probably learned about explicit phonics and that kind of thing. So I have like a little activity, a phonics activity that I use as a kind of like an intervention for students who struggle with their short vowel sounds. And I love this activity. I learned it from the Institute of Multisensory Education. And you make these vowel tents. You can use index cards. I just used this kind of, I don't even know, this type of paper cardstock that I found in our workroom. It was like scraps from something. And we just fold it in half. And then on each side is the letter, the same letter, A on one side, A on the other. So A, E, I, O, U, they put them in front of them. And then I start very simple. The sound, I'll just say the sound. The sound is ah. They repeat ah. A spells ah, and they'll lift up the A. The sound is ah. They repeat ah. O spells ah, and they'll lift it up. Okay, and then we'll go to a little bit harder. We're going to go to the syllable level. So now I'm going to add like a consonant or two after that. The syllable is ick. They're going to say ick. I spells I, and they'll hold up that I. The syllable is ought. They'll say ought. O spells ah. All right, then the harder level is to put it in a whole word. The word is red. They'll say red. E spells eh. This is so great. Let me show you a little video. Hopefully I remember to check the box to share my sound. So if you don't hear sound, like Amy, wave or tell me something, okay? So here's a video of my students doing this. Okay, here we go. The sound is I. Repeat.
I. I spells I.
The sound is Repeat.
U spells
The sound is Repeat.
A spells
Well, that's so easy. Let's try something harder. Let's try syllables. The sound is ick. Repeat.
ick. I spells I.
The syllable is awk.
O spells aw.
Good. The syllable is ud. Repeat.
U spells
Oh, good. Let's try something even harder. Let's do words. Here we go. The word is men. Repeat.
men. E spells e.
The word is set. Repeat.
Set. E spells
Yes, I did it twice in a row. The word is sit. Repeat.
sit. I spells it.
Yeah, there we go. The word is. Okay, so you guys get the idea.
Top.
And what's great is too, you'll be doing it and you'll see a student kind of miss, and then okay, I'm going to keep going back to that specific sound that they were struggling with. Sometimes, short E and short I, those are really common to have students that struggle with those. And so sometimes I might only have the E and the I tent up there and just practice before doing those before I add the other ones. So hopefully that's a helpful idea for you for phonics. And let's go on to our next move. This move I usually have to preface and say, don't shoot the messenger, because this one can be really hard for people. Initially, I know it was hard for me initially, but I had to completely abandon the 3 cueing strategies. And the 3 cueing strategies refers to this idea that readers use various cues to figure out the words as they are reading. I'm not talking about that they use cues to figure out the meaning of the word. That is different than actually decoding a word. And so I was taught to use these different prompts, like, does it make sense? Does it sound right? The last one, does it look right? That sounds promising, but a lot of us were taught to use that as a last resort. So if you haven't heard of 3 cueing, then you have probably heard of these Beanie Baby strategies, right? So use your eagle eye, look at the picture, and then you can figure out the word. Be like Skippy the Frog, skip over the word, read the rest of the sentence, and then figure out the word. These are guessing strategies. These aren't reading strategies. And the 3 cueing system is not supported by research. And I was just really shocked. Not only is it not supported, but it's been debunked. And in fact, what the research tells us is that these are strategies that poor readers use, not good readers. So when we teach these students these strategies, we're literally teaching them to read like a poor reader. Good readers don't need the context or the pictures. They can read words in isolation. And I saw this with my son because he depended on these strategies. This is what he was doing before he had the skills and before he was a much better reader. So we don't want students' eyes to go off of the word. And you'll see that a lot with the students when they are struggling and they need help. It's like they're going to look anywhere but the word. They're looking at the picture. They're looking up in the air. They're looking up at you. And we want their eyes on the word and to become familiar with the details of that word, decode the word from left to right. I love this quote by Mark Seidenberg. He said, the best cue to a word is the word itself. And so my strategy to share today on this are 3 decoding prompts that you can use when a student comes to a word they don't know. So the first thing you're just going to do is point to the word they missed, or point to that part within the word that they missed, and give them some time to say the sound. Now, if they can't recall the sound, then you go to that verbal cue where you're going to tell them the sound, like, oh, OU spells ow. What sound? Ow. Yes. And then the blending cue, encourage them to blend the sounds again. So I'm not just going to tell them that word is house. I'm going to go, OU is ow. There's ow. And then I'm going to have them blend ouse, because they knew those other graphemes. And that gives them an opportunity to match those spellings with the sounds, right? So let me show you a little video. This was a student I was tutoring over the summer, and you can see I give her a bit of time to state the correct sound, and I just prompt her by saying, remember, we learned this last week. So I waited maybe a little bit longer than I might for a student who I knew hadn't been taught that sound, or just I knew didn't know it, because I wanted her to recall it first, and then she's going to blend the word. Now, is it loud enough for you, Amy? Like, do I need to turn my sound up, or is it fine? The last one was fine. Okay.
Yes, and B. What?
Remember AI? We learned this last week. What's AI spell?
Ooh,
First, just tell me AI. Do you remember what AI spells?
A.
Yes, good.
8. Wait.
Nice.
Here.
Oh, my turn. Yes, said B. Wait here.
Yes, said B. Wait here.
Okay, so you can see that kind of helped her. She kept trying to blend right away without making sure we knew that AI spelling. And once we stopped, look at that AI is what? A, then she could blend it and read it. So great. Okay, so let's move on to move 4. So move 4 is to use decodable text instead of predictable text with beginning readers. So predictable texts are those texts that have those, they have those patterns you have to memorize. We cleaned up the house, we cleaned up the garage, we cleaned up the kitchen. And really the only way for brand new readers to read those words is to use the 3 cueing strategies that we just talked about that we shouldn't be using, right? So, and I just remember being so frustrated with that when I was first teaching kindergarten, because I wanted my students to practice and solidify those sound spelling concepts I had taught, which at that point were basically just the letters of the alphabet. But then we had these books filled with all these spellings that hadn't been taught. And so what decodables do is give the opportunity for those students to practice those skills you are teaching them in your phonics concept, in your phonics lessons. I love having high quality decodables. You can see right there, I love those pictures in those books. I love engaging storylines, beautiful pictures and illustrations. That's really important to me to have in small group. I don't have enough of these in whole group. And so, and the strategy I'm going to share for decodable text today is a whole group decodable routine. So, and I will say, like, this is great in first grade, this is great in kindergarten. As your students are transitioning out of decodables, then this routine might be something you would do in small groups. So if you're in upper grades, this is something you could do for just the students that need it and that need that, help solidifying those phonics concepts. Okay, so here's my routine. I give each student a copy of the decodable text. So these ones are going to be on paper, and I'll show you a place where you can get those. Liz, I'll go back in just a second and I'll answer that question. Then I give them 1 to 2 minutes to highlight the target skill words. So like, let's say we just did EE for the spelling E. Then they get out their highlighters. I say, on your mark, get set, go. And then they have like a minute to find all the words with E, and they love it. They're like so quiet and they're really excited trying to find the targeted skill. Then we put our highlighters away, and then they're going to read just those highlighted words, and we'll either read them together as a class, individually, or with a partner. And then they'll read the entire passage. And again, we might do that as a class, or a lot of times I will have them partner read it with a partner. And I'm really intentional with those partners where I have a stronger reader in each partnership that can help the other one if they need help. And then after we've read the entire passage, we will practice retelling it, or we'll ask some simple text dependent questions on it. So these back here, okay, let me show you the pictures because she was wondering what the decodables were. These are geodes. I really love geodes. They are expensive, and I got them in a series of different grants. And these are great because they're a little less decodable. So some books are really highly decodable, and these are a little less decodable. So why I like these is that I transition students from highly decodable text into these ones because they're less decodable, and then they're ready for regular text. So sometimes we don't think about transitioning and kind of helping scaffold them as they move out of decodable text. And so that's what these ones do really well. But like right now, so I have the first grade geodes. I'm teaching first grade. Most of my students couldn't handle these. So I have like one group that can handle them fine, but the other ones need more highly decodable right now. And if I throw them into something way too hard for them, they resort to guessing and the 3Qing. So I have to like be careful how I do it. Okay. That was probably more information than you needed, but, and then the ones in the top left are Flyleaf Publishing. And I really like those. And the one on the bottom is Scholastic Laugh a Lot readers, Laugh a Lot phonics readers. I can't remember. It's Laugh a Lot something. And those are just on Amazon, and those are cute too. Those are a little newer. Okay, and now let me show you where I get the passages for the whole group. You may have heard of it, YouFly, and I'm just going to show you on their website where you can get them because it's free and it's such a great resource.
Okay, so just type in ufliteracy.org. And then you're going to click right here where it says go to Toolbox. And you can scroll down. And these are all the different lessons. And so let's say we're working on digraphs. I'm going to come right here. And then you can see the different phonics concepts here on the left. And then you can see in this third column over here, we have the decodable passage. So let's say that we're working on SH spells sh, then I can click that decodable passage and it's right there ready for me to print.
Okay, so that's great because like I said, those are free. And then this is just important, and I kind of just alluded to this a little bit, but decodable texts are like training wheels. Kids need them for only a short amount of time. And the goal is to transition away from them as soon as the child is ready. So we don't want to overcorrect here and think that we only use decodables or that we keep students in decodables too long. And sometimes I feel like I see people overcorrecting a little bit, or I see someone saying, I teach 4th grade, what are the best decodables for my class? And I'm like, well, most of your students shouldn't need them, right? It's just going to be a small group of students, hopefully, that need them. So I just think that's a good reminder. Okay, let's go to move 5. Move 5 is to use a better approach to those sight words. And in the book, I'll go through I'll explain why I'm doing quotations right now, because researchers use the term sight words a little differently, but I'm not going to get into that right now. But if you're like me, you were kind of taught that sight words are words that can't be sounded out. But that's not true. In fact, look at this. I don't remember if this is the Fry list or Dolch list, but look how many words on here are completely decodable. In, it, not, if, so. I mean, there's no reason to teach those words differently than other ones. And then the ones that are a little more irregular usually just have one irregular part. Like look at said. The S is very regular. The D is very regular. It's the AI that is the unusual spelling. And that is the part that the students need to remember. So words are not read by their shape, contextual guessing, or whole word memorization. This is not the most efficient way to store words in our memory. And what happens, we have students that are memorizing words as a whole, and they're going to hit a limit where they can't memorize any more words as a whole. And this might happen in 3rd grade, where they've been able to, seems like they were reading fine, but they were memorizing words, and then they can't memorize anymore. And there's this great study that I thought was so interesting, because they found that beginning readers who focus on letter sound relationships instead of memorizing whole words, they increase the activity in the area of the brain best wired for reading. So that's what we want, right? So we do want the students to match the sounds they hear in the word with the letters, the spellings on the page, and connect it with meaning. This means it will be orthographically mapped, which just means that now it is ready and they're going to be able to retrieve that information instantly. Not that they've memorized it as a whole, like as a visual unit, but they've made those connections between the sounds and the letters and the meaning. I love this quote, that every word wants to be a sight word when it grows up. Means any word. We want any word to become, be able to be retrieved automatically and effortlessly for our students. So the way that I like to teach my high frequency words, I was taught by Nora Chabazi from Ebley. And it's just this little way where I really think it helps the students point out the sounds in the words. You say the sounds first, said, then we're going to put those letters and map the letters with the sounds, and then we're going to point out the irregular part. So I'm just going to show you a little video of me teaching this in my classroom so you can see. Okay, our heart word today is laugh. Like, I love to laugh when my friend tells a... Sorry, goodness, let me start it again. I was going to, oh, where's my video? There we go. Okay. The joke. Tell me the sounds and laugh.
Oh, ah.
Good, watch me as I do my sound lines. Oh, ah. Your turn, say the sounds while you write. Good. What's the first sound? Oh. Oh. Say as you write. Oh, please. What's the next sound?
Wait.
What? Write those two letters for our ah.
Circle it.
Yeah, some of you are already a little surprised, right? And what's the last sound in laugh? Look at this spelling.
I knew it.
Write those letters while you spell. Okay. Which of those spellings are unusual and a little bit tricky? What do you think, Shay?
AU.
The AU, definitely. Will you guys circle that AU and put 2 lines under it because 2 letters spell that sound? That is a very unusual spelling for ah. And there's something else that's a little bit tricky for us, isn't there? What do you think, Dean?
GH.
The GH.
I knew it.
There are a handful of words where GH spells the sound. We haven't learned that. That's tricky. Let's put 2 lines. Circle that GH and put 2 lines under them. Good. All right, take a look at that. Let's see. Are you going to be able to remember those tricky spellings? This is a hard one. Okay, ready? Erase those letters. Leave the lines and circles. Thank you. Oh, you're doing it so quickly and quietly. Thank you very much. Get it all erased, erased, erased. Good. All right, now say as you write the word laugh. Go ahead, put it back in. Do you remember? Very nice. Make sure your H is nice and tall so it doesn't look like an N, please. You get that? Oh, wow. Very good. Okay, did you get your L?
Yes.
Did you get your A?
Yes.
Did you get your GH?
Yes.
Oh, I didn't do that very good. And what's the word?
Laugh.
Laugh. Can you think of a sentence with the word laugh and tell it to your neighbor? Okay. Okay. Let's move on to move 6. Move 6 is a meaningful fluency practice. So sometimes we think that this is just the fluency is going to develop on its own. But a student who has a problem with fluency, if we just leave them to read silently, that problem is not going to get better. It's just going to become inaudible. So we need to give our students plenty of opportunities to practice out loud with the opportunity for feedback. We know that fluent readers have good accuracy, speed, and prosody. And we know, and I heard Jan Hasbrook was came and presented for you guys, and you know that she says that accuracy is first, foremost, and forever the foundation of fluency. And of course, we need to be focusing on that first. Now, what do we do in our classrooms sometimes to practice reading aloud? Well, a really common thing we do in our classrooms is round robin reading. But if you think of how much time each student is getting to practice when they read out loud in round robin reading, how much time does each student get? Like a minute? Like 2 minutes? And then what are the rest of the kids doing? Supposedly following along. But so it's really not an effective use of instructional time. Students are getting a lot of practice with this. Also, and this is can be hard to hear too, but this could be damaging for some students. It raises their anxiety level. You have some students who, oh my gosh, I'm going to read in front of the class. And now, the whole time they're kind of figuring out, counting ahead, students figuring out which paragraph they're going to have to read and stressing over that. I think the story of Amir Baraka is really powerful to show the effect that this can have on some kids, because he shares an experience when he was in 6th grade and the teacher called on him to read out loud in front of the class. And he just stood up there floundering through the book. He said it felt like forever that he was up there with no help. He couldn't read the part she told him to read. And he said he decided at that moment that he was going to become a dope dealer. And he did. And he ended up in prison. And I just think that story is so powerful. Wow, the impact that had on him. And it was in prison that he was diagnosed with dyslexia and finally got the help he needed. He completely changed his life around. He's now an Emmy-nominated producer and helps and is a huge advocate for those with dyslexia and those in the prison system. It's amazing. But I just think, wow, sometimes we don't realize the effect something can have on someone. So you really want to consider that. So what can we do instead of round robin reading? Well, a couple different ideas. You can do choral reading. Everyone can read aloud at the same time in your class. Then no one's put on the spot. The weaker readers have a great model and they can chime in when they can, right? And they're not embarrassed. And think how much practice everyone is getting now. A lot more minutes than before. Another great activity I love to do is partner reading. I do a lot of partner reading where partners can take turns reading aloud. And that is not as stressful, right? With just one other person. There's lots of different ways to do partner reading. One way is called me-we reading. I learned this from Dr. Anita Archer in her book, Explicit Instruction. And I made a little video for my students to teach them how to do me-we reading. So let me show you that.
I'm going to talk about another way that we can read with our partners called me-we reading. The first thing you need to do is make sure you and your partner sit right next to each other so you can hear each other and so you can help each other. So sit shoulder to shoulder, elbow to elbow. We will take turns with our partner when we do me-we reading. You will read an entire paragraph or page when it's your turn.
Your partner and you will take turns, and when it's your turn to read, you can choose if you want to do me, which means you read by yourself, or we, which means you read together. So you'll tell your partner, I choose me, or I choose we. And then when it's your partner's turn, they get to choose either me or we.
When it's your partner's turn to read, make sure you listen very carefully so that you can help them and be a good coach. You also need to listen carefully so that if your partner says we, you are ready to read with them. Let's watch two students as they do me-we reading.
I'm gonna do me. Bears are animals called mammals. Mammals have hair or fur on their bodies.
I choose we.
Mammal mothers make milk inside their bodies.
And that is how you do me-we reading. Are you ready to try?
So you're welcome to use that video in your classroom if you want. If you just go on YouTube to my channel. It's just my name, Lindsay Kemeny. I don't have that many videos on there, so you can easily find it. I think it's called Me We Reading. Okay, move 7. Move 7 is using vocabulary and background knowledge to improve comprehension. This is an area really I neglected before, but researchers have known for years that the most important factor in good reading comprehension is how much vocabulary and background knowledge the reader has on the subject. And I really saw this firsthand when I was working with my son. So I provided a lot of his reading instruction, and he asked me if we could read a book on black holes. Now, he was obsessed with black holes. Like, he watched videos about black holes. He took classes on black holes. He had read and checked out lots of books on black holes. So he had a lot of content knowledge on this. And we checked out a book from the library, and he was reading it aloud to me. And I had to keep stopping him because I did not understand the passage. It was filled with words I didn't know, like quasars and event horizon. And I just didn't have the background knowledge that I needed to understand. So I had to keep stopping him and go, wait, I need to go back. Oh, wait, what's happening? And go back. But he was comprehending fine. He understood everything. So even though I was a better decoder than him, he was having better comprehension of that passage because he had the background knowledge and vocabulary relevant to it. And so that just really showed me firsthand how important this is. Okay, so for this move, I'm going to share an activity, a vocabulary activity called 3-column notes. And I love this. I learned from Dr. Deb Glazer. So you just have a piece of paper and you just divide it into 3 parts. And then I will do this on Monday. We'll put the word in the first column. We'll put a student-friendly definition in the second column. And then we'll draw a quick little picture demonstrating that vocabulary word in the third column. Then students fold it. They're going to fold the pictures back behind the definitions and then fold the words on top of that. So now they kind of have like little flashcards with, on one side, it's going to have the word, and on the other side, it has the definition. Then everyone stands up, pushes in their chairs, and then you can turn on music, or you can just say walking, 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 and they all wander around the room. And then when the music stops, or when you say stop, they stop and they buddy up with someone close to them. And then they take turns quizzing each other. They choose any word, and the partner will say the definition, and then they switch, and the partner will choose a word, and the other one will read a definition. You could alter this by having them, instead of the definition, you could have them use that word in a sentence. Then they walk around and do it again. So this is a nice way, because sometimes I will be really good introducing the vocabulary word, and then I forget to have meaningful opportunities throughout the week to review those. And so that's why I like the 3-column notes, because we'll just keep them in our desk. And then when we have a few minutes, like before we're going to read our story, we pull them out and we can do that. So that's a great activity. Okay. So those are the 7 moves. So the first move was teaching phonemic awareness with intention. And the activity I shared with that was the word chaining. Move 2 was to teach phonics explicitly and systematically. And I showed you that vowel intensive with the vowel tense. Move 3 was decoding strategies, not 3-cueing strategies. I had to completely abandon the 3-cueing strategies. And the strategy I shared with that were those 3 decoding prompts of what to do when a student comes to a word they don't know. Move 4 was to use decodable text instead of predictable text with beginning readers. And I showed you a whole group decodable text routine that you can use. Move 5 is to embrace a better approach to teaching sight words. And I showed you that video from my classroom of how I teach those sight words. The word was laugh, if you remember that. And move 6 is that meaningful fluency practice. And we talked about, instead of round robin reading, we could do choral reading, we can do partner reading. And I shared that we reading video. And then move 7 is to improve comprehension by developing vocabulary and background knowledge. And the idea I shared with you was the 3-column notes. as an activity for vocabulary. So, of course, if you want to know more, there's a lot more in the book, and each move is a chapter, and then I'll share my favorite strategies in each chapter. And something fun is all the pictures are from my own classroom. In fact, my daughter took some of the pictures, and she was in 4th grade last year. Because she's at my same school, and I would be like, hey, can you come in at recess just really quick? The camera's set up, just take a picture, And then there's QR codes too. So some of the QR codes will go to like a PDF, a website, or there's lots of videos from my classroom. So that's kind of fun. And each chapter has a keep, stop, start, something to keep doing, stop doing, and start doing. So anyway, that's a little bit about that. And this, you can see my social media. So like if you're on Instagram, you can follow me. If you're on Facebook, I have a page called Teaching with Lindsay Kemeny, and I'm the co-host of the Literacy Talks podcast. So if you can't get enough and you want to listen to a literacy podcast, you can hear me there. So, okay, do we have time for questions, or are there any questions? You can put them in the chat. If so.
Lindsay, if you have time, we'd love to pick your brain about some things. I bet if anybody wants to just unmute, or you can put it in the chat and I can ask it, or Lindsay can see it.
I have a quick question for you, Lindsay. And I'll have to leave after this because I have to go get my son from work, but I'll finish watching the rest of the video because I do want to hear all your answers. So I'm just curious, of those moves, obviously you're probably very influential in your building as well for other teachers to learn from you and with you. Which one of those moves has been the most rewarding? And which one of those moves has been the most challenging for you, or for maybe to move teachers around you? I'm in a similar job as Amy, as far as I'm the literacy leader at my school. And I can control what's happening in my classroom, but I also want to help shift people's thinking. So I'll stop talking and let you talk.
No, that's good. I have to think about that. I mean, like for me, one of the biggest changes was that getting rid of the 3 queuing, right? That was kind of the biggest change. And also it's kind of like that combined with the decodable text, because I was teaching kindergarten, and I just remember I had this little student who's sounding out that one of those first decodables. I wrote lots of grants to get those decodables, and he was sounding it out, and he was like, Mrs. Kemeny, I am actually reading the words. And he was so like, I just remember that moment. Like, it was so exciting because he realized. And what's fun is that this student did have, or does have dyslexia, right? And it was so fun because he was like, I can be successful. And like, they know when they're kind of guessing and they're not even really, but he knew he was sounding it out. Oh my gosh, I'm actually reading. So the 3 queuing and decodables together probably is one that I saw the biggest, but it's really hard to choose one too, because it's like, oh my gosh, we need the phonemic awareness. We need the phonics. My phonics lessons are so different.
And it depends on the student too. I realized that, each student can have their own big move, if you will.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. And for teachers, definitely it would be some of those first ones that are harder, because I think most of us can agree like on fluency, right? And even comprehension. I think it's hard when they've been taught, like for me, the 3 queuing system, been taught that and did that over and over. Then there's like this level of guilt kind of. So, and the other thing is that for some kids, it's fine. They use the 3 queuing system and it's not a big deal, because guess what? They pick up the code themselves. It's like those top 30% of students, right?
Right.
So and then the other thing is that even for the whole class in kindergarten, it might look like they're reading, because they're memorizing those patterns. And so that teacher's like, what's the problem? But it's the teacher down the line that's like, now the books are harder. Now there's not pictures, and now they can't read. So it's really, you have to take that deep look. And as a kindergarten teacher, it's so much easier to give them a predictable text and hear them just, I mean, their eyes don't even have to be on the words. Like they'll just, and it's always the beginning of the year, first grade, because I'm first grade now. Like I got to break those habits, because I have some that are just like, and they're like looking at me while they're reading. I'm like, if you're looking at me, are you reading the words? Like you've just memorized it, you know, like,
Yeah.
so, yeah, so.
Well, thank you very much. And Amy, keep being awesome. And Lindsay, thank you. And I will see you guys next time. Bye.
You. Any other questions?
I have one. It's kind of a burning question about the whole group decodable text reading.
Yeah.
So what about the kids who actually need to decode the words? But if you're choral reading, and maybe I'm just not understanding the routine, because I've been trying to study up a little bit on it. Are you just reading the whole sentence without decoding it first?
So most of the time we are partner reading it, and because then now towards it, it's going to depend on your grade too. Like towards the end of the year or even middle, when they're all like, they don't need to sound out each one, and we can kind of, it's easier to choral read it, right?
Yeah.
And right now it's harder because we're at the beginning of the year, first grade. So what I usually will do is like, I have them in partners, and the first partner, the stronger partner, goes first. They read the first paragraph, and then the second one reads the first paragraph. So they had a model, but that paragraph is not short enough where they can just repeat it. Do you know what I mean? So they had the model, but now they do have to decode. And then the first one will read the second paragraph, and then the second one will read the second paragraph. So that's how we'll do it most of the time, is partner reading. And
do you
then
have any advice for like if people do it like whole group first?
Yeah, you
the
could.
Same way, or do you decode through the first one? Or
it's kind of depend on your class, but you could totally, like, because when we will do words together, like for our phonics lessons, we'll chorally read the words, and I'll show them the first one, the second one, we blend the first and second letter together, and then the last letter, and we blend it, you know? So if you want to do it whole class and that's where they are, I would do it like that, and maybe just do the sentence and then go back and read the sentence smooth.
okay, thank you.
Yeah. Anything else? Okay. All right. Well,
thank you so much, Lindsay. We really appreciate it. And we're going to get lots of great tips from your book and from the webinar tonight. And good luck with all your new adventures.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, thanks a lot. Bye, guys.
Bye.